Thanks for having me. Hello everybody, and welcome! My name is Toronite, and this is Pokemon TCG for the Game Boy Color that has received a renaissance on the Nintendo Switch via Nintendo Switch Online last year, and we will be doing an 80% glitchless run of this entire game, a wonderful game, a relic from the 90s that has been brought back and been getting through a bit of a renaissance over the last couple of years. So we are just going to go straight into it because this is, we're going to go through a very long tutorial that will basically give us a chance to essentially explain the game, because once we get the ball rolling, it's going to be a very high-paced type of speed run. So we will, first of all, very important, start our name. So we will just go with this being Anime Speedrun Festival. We will just call ourselves ASF, and this will be our name for the rest of the run. So if everybody else is ready, I am ready to count down from the top and start this speed run. Right? We will go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and begin. Okay, so the Pokemon trading card game, this version of the game was released in 1998, and it featured the first 200 or so cards, essentially the first 3 sets of the game, which are base set, fossil, and jungle. So in essence, this is essentially the trading card game equivalent of Pokemon Red and Blue, with a very similar story to it. There's 8 leaders that you have to collect their badges, or in this case, their medals, and you basically go through the Elite Four, in this case called the Grand Masters, and become the champion. Simple as that. Couldn't get any more simple than that. But this game, it's a little bit different than from what you may think of what Pokemon is. So the way to actually play this game is basically, for lack of a better word, similar to how you play on the RPGs. You play Pokemon, you evolve them if possible, and you knock your opponent's team out in order to win. So the way this game works is that the aim of the game is to collect prize cards, and every duel has a set number of prize cards, whether it be 3, 4, or in the set of bosses, 6 prize cards. You knock out an opponent's Pokemon, you collect the prize card, and you win by being the one to collect all the prize cards first. Or if you knock out all of your opponent's Pokemon before you get your final prize card, you win automatically. So that's essentially what we're going to try to do. It might not be the case in every single instance, because this is some of these fights are very RNG reliant, and there's sort of a lot to sort of get into it. Now, as you'll see, the coin flips are going to play a big factor, and I'll explain how coin flips may not be as random as you might initially think. We'll get into that a little bit later. So this game, when it comes to the Pokemon trading card game back in 1998, it was a lot more simple than even the RPG counterparts. So the way it works is that instead of you having the more than dozen Pokemon types that you associate in the game, you only have 7 Pokemon types. Grass, fire, water, lightning, fighting, psychic, and colorless. Colorless is essentially the game's version of flying and psychic. Flying and normal type Pokemon. So, by the way, we are going to go through this. If I mess up anything about this tutorial, because this is a scripted tutorial with very clear instructions, it's actually going to be a bit of a time waster, a little bit. So if sometimes you see me kind of stop myself trying to focus a little bit more on the game, it's because if I mess up even just one input, it'll reset the whole thing. Not the whole thing, but it'll restart the turn. And that's why in TCG we actually skip the tutorial. We have the option of skipping the tutorial, and we can we essentially start the timer at 8 minutes and 3 seconds if we do so, just because the tutorial is long and you need to do like a strange glitch in order to skip through it, which we're on a glitchless run, can't do glitches. But yeah, basically, so the way the types work, there's only 7 types in this game, and you may notice, okay, so what happens to stuff like poison or bug types or ghost types? Well, they essentially get consolidated and grouped into other types. And that's where type advantages play a little bit of a different role than back in the day. So you have, for example, you have a fighting type like Machop. He's weak to Psychic, but you take another fighting type, say Rhyhorn, who, in the regular RPG games, he's not a fighting type. He's a rock and ground type, and they are weak to grass and water. So in the TCG's case, instead of, even though he's a fighting type, he's actually weak to grass. So you have to take into consideration every single Pokemon's own type advantages in order to actually make sure that you get, that you actually do the proper matchups. So one thing that about this game that makes this very, very interesting is the fact that the game is essentially an open world. You can basically challenge any gym that you want in any order that you want, provided that you meet that gym's requirements. Or not gyms. In this game, they're called clubs, but it's essentially the same thing. So that's what, and not just that. It's not just an open world, but also travel is instantaneous, meaning that you can essentially do any kind of route that you want, so long as that it makes sense, and you'll actually not be losing a lot of time. And that's kind of where part of the beauty of this game comes in, is the fact that routing is very fluid. It's left up to the runner's imagination to be able to think of what makes sense for their specific goals, what they want, and partially also for what type of deck they are about to build. So deck building is a very important aspect of this game. Of course, it is for any card game, but very important so for a speedrun of this game. And there is no bigger moment in terms of making sure that you get the deck building aspect correct than the very first moment of you getting to pick your own deck. So there are 3 decks in this game. They are based off the Kanto starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. And each of those decks, they have their own unique properties that can make them good and can make them a little bit different from each other. So we are going to be running Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur has been a more popular deck used by top runners in the last couple of years. Shoutouts to Pinecone 606, who basically revolutionized the use of Bulbasaur, because Bulbasaur has some exclusive cards that the Charmander deck, which is the deck that was basically the dominant deck for speedruns throughout its entire history up until like 3 years ago or something like that. It has the Bulbasaur deck has Pokemon such as Hitmonchan and Electabuzz. Those are 2 cards that are going to be very important to us for the vast majority of the speedrun. Charmander, that's not to say Charmander and Squirtle can't be good decks. In fact, they're still very, very good decks. Charmander has a lot of utilities with the specific amount of trainer cards that it has. Trainer cards are basically cards that are not Pokemon cards, but you use them to help to basically either get specific cards, get energy prices to be able to power up your Pokemon and allow them to attack. And the Charmander deck has cards like Computer Search, which is an absurdly overpowered card that allows you to basically pick any deck that you want, or any card that you want in your entire deck, which I don't need to explain how good a card is. If the effect is you get whatever card you want in your deck, and all you got to do is just discard 2 cards. So Squirtle also has a lot of the elements that the Bulbasaur deck has. It's just that we don't use Squirtle a whole lot because it doesn't have as many good trainer cards that the Bulbasaur deck has. But that's not to say Squirtle is a bad deck. The number 6 on the leaderboard for this game is the Squirtle deck. So you can choose whatever deck you want, and if you do a lot, you put in the time in, you'll be able to actually do you'll be able to get a great time if you just work hard enough at that specific deck. So we are going to be, first of all, we're going to be going through our menu to skip all the animations, and we are actually going to do a very, very tricky manipulation of the RNG, which hopefully, if everything works out well, the reason why we reset is because we want that global frame counter that plays from the moment you turn on the game to be able to actually give us one specific count hit. So let's see if this works. And okay, did not work. So what we are trying to see is we are trying to get a computer search which the Bulbasaur deck does not have, or a Duck Trio, which will be our win condition for the end of the game. If this attempt does not work, then we can just continue on. It's not a big deal if we miss it. And the reason why I want to kind of show this off because it is, oh, perfect computer search. Awesome. So I was very nervous about whether or not this was actually going to work. So the reason why we do this is because computer search, like I said, very overpowered card in the game. And what just happened was, so basically, hold on. Oops, there we go. So what happens is, in the game, everything is dictated by that frame rule that I did mention, and everything is, when I say everything, I mean everything. From what type of booster packs you will get, and what type of fights that your opponent will give you, what cards they will have in their hands, to even the coin flips. So, coin flips are, for the purposes of the speedrun, they are random. But everything is actually predetermined. The thing is, we don't actually know what the result of the coin flip is until we actually see it. Once we actually see the result of the coin flip, it will always be constant. You can restart the fight, you can restart that turn however many times you want, and that coin flip will always stay the same result. Now, and the reason why it stays like that is because that global frame rule, it actually gets changed, it actually gets frozen the moment you start a fight. But the only way you can unfreeze that frame rule during a fight is through a number of actions. Like, for example, if you were to say, let's see, oh, this is our first fight. We finally actually start the run proper, and we actually get a first turn win, which is absolutely phenomenal. And this is actually what we want to hope for a lot of these early fights. We get a second Duck Trio, which is, wow, this is already off to a phenomenal start as far as the kind of cards that we want. So basically, what I was saying, going back to the frame rule. So everything is dictated by these frames, and in battle, those frames actually are frozen. But if you do actions such as shuffling the deck or flipping another coin or anything that will basically kind of disrupt different cards and everything, that will unfreeze that global frame rule by 1 frame. And if we happen, and it'll essentially re-roll the dice, for lack of a better word, even though there's no dice. It'll basically make the coin flip random again. So if we see it as a situation where the coin flips are going to is unfavorable, and we have a way to sort of unfreeze those frame rules to be able to actually get something going, then hopefully I'll be able to show that off. And we're just kind of going through some of these fights. These fights early on, they can be a little bit difficult because as you notice, we're actually going through a Hitmonchan only deck early on. And that's because Hitmonchan is an incredibly powerful card. But one of the issues with doing a deck like this is the fact that a lot of the fights, they have a Pokemon that actually can resist fighting types, such as Hitmonchan. So what we want to try to do is avoid fights that can give us a lot of trouble. Avoid fights that'll give us those kinds of potential problems. So we want to try to see, and we're about to actually see how good plus power is. There we go. Instead of it taking 2 turns to be able to beat this Mankey, we're gonna beat it in 1 turn, which will allow us to actually get by relatively fine with this fight. Michael is one of the hardest fights in the game, and I'm very, very lucky that we actually are going to have this this very, very difficult fight. Michael, what makes Michael so difficult is the fact that he has a lot of very powerful Pokemon, Hitmonchan and Electabuzz and Hitmonlee, but thankfully, because of computer search and using that Mankey, we actually have been able to get by actually relatively quick. So this route that I'm actually using, have you noticed the type of booster pack that we're getting is this one, Coliseum? Oh, that's another Duck Trio. That is fantastic. We got 3 Duck Trios total. That is already enough for me to feel comfortable about the end game. The end game is going to be very, very rough, but thankfully with 3 Duck Trios and a computer search, it's going to be a lot more manageable. So those Coliseum packs that we get, there are 4 booster packs that we get at the end, and I'm actually going to reshuffle this because the shuffling, reset this because the shuffling is taking way too long. Usually that's kind of an indicator that the fight probably might not go as well as you would hope. Let's see, that is a flying Pikachu. That resists flying, so we are actually going to reset. Jennifer is one of those fights where you don't want to see that flying Pikachu because it resists fighting, but everything else is fair game, and that's another flying Pikachu. Jennifer is one of those fights that can be very, very difficult to overcome just because of that flying Pikachu. There are ways to go around, actually go around it, but they're non-Hitmonchan strategies, and thankfully we got plus power, which makes our next attack do 10 more damage. And you've already seen that a couple of times where we beat that Mankey in the last fight, and now we beat that Surfing Pikachu just now thanks to the power of plus power. So we saved a turn, and 1 turn is all it takes to either win a fight or just make it completely unwinnable, or at the bare minimum, like huge slowdown. So those Coliseum packs, those cards basically give us the best boost, the best types of cards in the entire game, whether it is from a, what did we call it? Whether it is another Hitmonchan or Computer Surge or Duck Trio or Scyther or Electabuzz. All those cards, they are phenomenal to have. And let's see, are we in trouble? Hopefully not. And these cards are, the way this specific route works is that we basically are trying to get a lot of the early cards from booster packs. So we do fights like Jessica and Heather and Michael. Are we in trouble? Actually, no, we are not in trouble. We actually got really lucky because the coin flips, that Jolteon would have beaten us if it just landed just 1 more coin flip landing hits, but thankfully there were 3 total coin flips, 3 straight coin flips that actually ended in tails. That is a 12.5% chance of that happening, so very lucky for that. So we are just kind of just rolling on through. A lot of these early fights that we have here do give Coliseum packs. There are 4 packs in the game: Coliseum, Mystery, Evolution, and Laboratory. We really don't care about the other 3, the last 3. We just want the Coliseum packs. And ooh, we have been rolling by. This has actually been a great start so far to this run. So that is Coliseum again. And do we get something? Not a lot of great cards from the last couple of fights, but that is fine. We have our trusty computer search, and we have plus powers. We have enough good cards to be able to have a decent early game up to this point, and we're now about to actually encounter our very first boss, Isaac. So you're gonna notice one thing about boss AI a little bit. The AI cheats, and by that I mean the AI has some very, very funny tendencies and a lot of bizarre things during matches where it will do just about anything to try to make the fight unfair. You will never be able to beat a boss on turn 1. The reason why is because they are programmed to always have at least 2 Pokemon that they are able to set onto their bench. And it does become a lot more complicated once you do that, because if you can't beat a Pokemon on turn 1, if you can't beat an opponent on turn 1, then you're always going to be fighting that possibility. Oh, we're actually going to not restart the fight, but at the very least, see if we can get out of this potential jam. Because that Magnemite, if that self-destruct had actually gone through, we would have lost because it does 40 damage. And that is kind of the unfortunate part about doing this type of fight is that... are we in trouble? Yeah, we are in trouble. So we are actually going to reset the fight. That's kind of one of the unfortunate things a little bit about the Hitmonchan deck is that it's very aggressive. But at the same time, you do invite the possibility of some fights being taking a little while and just don't end up being good fights. So this is what I mean by boss AI. It'll always seem like the bosses will just have that one fight, that one card that they just need at the right time to either win the fight or just waste a ton of time. But thankfully, we should be in pretty decent condition if this Magnemite does not paralyze us. It doesn't, so we are actually... Okay, I don't want to say we're home free, but we are close to getting this win. So one thing you notice, that Electro could have tried to... you could have tried to add some more energy cards, but it didn't because the AI knew that Pokemon was about to get knocked out. And sometimes the AI will, if it knows that their Pokemon are actually about to get knocked out, they will completely abandon that Pokemon and they will just start setting up Pokemon for the rest of the run that they have on their bench. And what they'll do is they'll just start giving energies to other Pokemon, even though they could have tried to do something with it. Let's see. We have a plus power. We do. And we beat Isaac. That was a little bit longer than what I hoped, but it's fine. This run is still in pretty good shape as far as being able to get the as far as being able to get a really good time. We've had a really good start, except for that Isaac, which took a little bit longer, but it's actually been a very solid run up to this point. So what I was saying, going back to what I was saying about the AI basically abandoning their Pokemon, there are ways you can actually manipulate and use that type of behavior to your advantage. So sometimes what we like to do is we would give up on a fight, or not give up on a fight, but we don't use our full power against Pokemon. We use a weaker attack. And in doing so, the AI will think, well, gosh, we might be able to survive next turn. So I'm going to add some extra energy cards to it. Little does the AI know, we actually purposefully held back in order to be able to give a much better attack. Sorry, I can talk. In order to be able to make the AI waste a turn, and by doing so, then we basically set ourselves up to have a really good run. Or not a really good run, but at the very least, give us more winnable fights. So we have ourselves Chris. Chris says, bit of a tough fight at times, but we were fortunate enough to be able to get some good trainer cards like Full Heal, which gets us out of paralysis, and that is another win for us. The reason why we're not going for a lot of these bosses is that some bosses require you to do a number of things in order to fight them. Some of them include you have to fight all of their trainers, their minions to be able to attack. We're actually, no, not this fight. We're going to fight her first. And that is the case for the fighting, the water, and the lightning club. You have to fight all of their underlings and beat them in order to actually win. So that is kind of what we're doing. We're basically doing a lot of fights where instead of the bosses early on, we're just going to be able to tackle some of the other fights much later on. And ooh, that is very bizarre. I have never seen... Okay. This can be quite tricky. I've never seen... Sarah's usually the easiest fight in the game, and we are in quite the predicament. So we have another plus power. There we go. Okay, crisis averted. Oh, the Pokemon TCG Discord will have a field day with that fight. Some of these fights, I will say, some of these fights, like I said in the past, some fights are easy, but there is no fight in the game that you can say is 100% a guaranteed victory. Some fights, whether the RNG is favorable or not, sometimes they can troll you a little bit and give us moments like Slowpoke evolving into Slowbro. So sometimes that's how TCG likes to operate. But it's all fine. We are actually still in a phenomenal shape right now. But we are going to be doing something a little bit different. Usually we will only do one Pokemon, or at least one Pokemon type in a fight. But in this instance, not so much. And the reason why is because this fight, Amanda has two Pokemon that will make this fight very, very unfair. But thankfully, we actually just won because we actually got a very favorable fight. So what you didn't see was the fact that Amanda has a Scyther, which is her ace, but the bulk of her deck is actually Jigglypuff. Try that one on for size if you're for a Water Club trainer. And we basically use a Charmander as a response to Scyther. We use Hitmonchan as a response to Jigglypuff. But then you have Pokemon like Poliwag, which can make things a little bit trickier, but thankfully we only just ran into a Poliwag, and Charmander, thanks to that potion, we were able to get a much needed quick win to sort of set everything back in motion. So now we are actually about to go for our second boss fight, which is Gene. He is the Rock Club leader, and if you want a very easy way of winning this fight, it's going to be using Scyther. Scyther resists fighting, and he actually does not have... he barely has any Pokemon that can even hurt Scyther. So that's what kind of makes things, makes this fight a little bit more manageable to do. But the one problem here is... There's actually two problems. Number one is the fact that this Rhyhorn can actually basically put us in a never-ending state of paralysis, or what I'd like to call the Leer Lock, which basically means that what it means is that Leer, if you flip a coin and lands heads, your opponent cannot attack. Now, there is a way to escape the Leer Lock, which is basically as using your Pokemon and switching to another Pokemon and then switching back to that Pokemon in order to win. Now, thankfully, we had something called a Mysterious Fossil, and what it does is that it's not a Pokemon per se, but it's a trainer card that can act like a Pokemon. And by doing so, we are able to switch into a Mysterious Fossil, and we're able to switch back into Scyther in order to escape the Leer Lock, and we're able to beat Gene with very little difficulty. But now, we are actually about to encounter our rival, and our rival, Ronald, which you saw at the very beginning of the run. He has a exceptionally special fight. In fact, he is so special that we have designed a very intricate way to actually go through with this fight. So you notice that I have made a special deck of Magnemites, and just Magnemite. You'll see why Magnemite is such a powerful Pokemon to be able to beat to get through Ronald, because we lose. We are going to lose on purpose, and the reason why is because losing is actually faster than beating Ronald. The reason why is Ronald does not know how to play the game. Ronald just designs his deck out of almost seemingly random cards and will just basically do whatever he wants. His AI is wildly unpredictable. And because of that, we designed a way to be able to give us the best chance to end the fight as soon as possible. Progress does not get affected if you win or lose to Ronald. The only thing you get out of beating Ronald is that you get a special promotional card that, for the purposes of this run, will not matter one bit. And so for this fight, and actually for the next fight, believe it or not, we are actually going to do the exact same thing and lose on purpose. But don't worry, we will have our revenge on Ronald. Might be a bit of a spoiler as to what the end game will be like. Could be a spoiler, I don't know. Guess we'll find out later on. But for now, we are actually going to go through the Water Club. The Water Club is... We've already basically been going through some of the fight, like Sarah and Amanda and now Joshua. And so now we've done the required fights in order to beat the minions here at the Water Club. And so now it is our turn to beat the leader, Amy, with our one and only Electabuzz. Bit of a shame that we didn't pull a second Electabuzz, but we can definitely win with another one. We just have to make sure that things are in our favor just a little bit. Which this opening hand is... It's not great. We'll see how the rest of the fight kind of goes. But I believe that everything... This can still be a problematic fight. But we just have to make sure that everything kind of goes well. We just need to make sure... ooh, we have a... Perfect, we have a Mysterious Oak. And... Okay, we are going to reset because that is... Okay, so do you notice that that is going to be a Tails? What we did, we just reset, and now... Because you're basically resetting every single time. If you reset every single moment, it is always going to turn out Tails. But because we used a coin flip, and we essentially make the coin flip go in a different direction, we now have the ability... let's see, are we in trouble? We'll see. Okay, no, we're fine. So basically, that coin flip was always going to be Tails, but because we used Pokeball, which involves doing a coin flip, we now essentially made the next coin flip be completely random, and it went in our favor, and we were able to win. And that is another good... I think that was a 2-minute fight against Amy. That could have gone a lot longer, but this has been like I said, this has been a very, very easy going run so far. And I am loving some of the love that we've been getting. The love that this game has gotten over the last year or so. It has been such a breath of fresh air. We've gotten new runs from people all across the world. An influx of Japanese runners actually getting this, actually playing this game for the first time, and it makes my heart really happy to be able to... We're actually going to reset this fight. This is actually very not so good. And it makes me very happy seeing the influx of new people coming in. We got over 100 different runners playing with a run of this game, and it's been such a fantastic journey getting to this point. It's been on a lot of different marathons. The amount of support and a lot of research that has gone into making this run as great as it is immeasurable, and is all thanks to the wonderful people who dedicated years and years of research of this game. And I just want to give a special shout out to the Pokemon TCG speedrunning community. I came into this game about 2021. My first, just kind of give an example of, what type of game this is. I started running this game at 1 hour and almost 40 minutes. And thanks to the help and support from the entire community, I've now, actually, a couple of days ago, I set a new PB at 52 minutes. So that kind of gives you an idea of how good one can improve at this game. It seemed like a lot of random, a lot of luck-based stuff that's been happening. And while luck does play a role, but this game invites creativity. It gives the trainers a lot of abilities to try and think of something outside the box and try to see if something can actually work. And I've been able to do that to make sure that these runs are about as consistent as possible, even taking into account all the luck and everything that comes with a card game speed run. So and by the way, the love of the trading card game community has also been wonderful. There's a special the Pokemon Company released a special animation. Ooh, that is a loss from Ken. By the way, I should mention Ken is our next boss fight. He is the Fire Club. He does a lot of colorless Pokemon for some reason, and so we are basically trying to make trying to use Diglett and Dugtrio to be able to beat a lot of the Pokemon like Jigglypuff and Chanseys and whatnot, and Tauros and those kinds of Pokemon. This is going to be a similar fight in our next fight against Murray, which instead of fire types is going to be it's going to be psychic types. But going back to the earlier point that I was saying, the Pokemon Company actually released a cute little animated series last year that basically shows a lot of the heart and what makes the Pokemon card game so much fun to be around. It's a fantastic community, and I am so happy to be a part of it, even in a very small and niche way, such as speedrunning it. And that is it. Dugtrio really makes a lot of these fights a lot easier to go through. But now we actually are going up against our next boss, who is going to be our 5th medal, Murray. Like I was saying, Ken also has, like Ken, Murray has a lot of colorless Pokemon, meaning Pokemon such as Dugtrio and Hitmonchan can beat it really easily. But there are two things about it. Number one, there's a lot of stalling tactics involved, and we're actually going to see if we need to send reinforcements. That is going to be a tail, so we want to reset the game before the game has a chance to realize that it is not actually doing that it is going to be a tails. So the stall tactics I was mentioning, that's part of what makes the fight a little bit more difficult. But at the same time, let's see, that is actually going to be heads. Perfect. So that Mr. Mime that you see right there, that Mr. Mime has a Pokemon power, which is essentially a passive ability that you can either activate or it's always going to be active, called I forgot what it was called. It was Invisible Wall. Yes. Basically, any damage that it will do that does more than 30 damage will actually do. Sorry, minor misclick right there. But any damage that does 30 or more will actually be negated. So Diglett is a bad matchup against it. But if you were to say something along the lines of this could be quite problematic. Let's see. That Kadabra can do a lot of damage, but we're actually... Never mind. Actually, we're fine. Never mind. We're actually fine. It's not going to be an issue now. So that so Diggle's a bad matchup with Mr. Mime, but we put Hitmonchan in because Hitmonchan can do 20 damage on Mr. Mime, which is exactly what we need, and it will go down in 2 hits. The question here is, what comes first, Mr. Mime or us beating Murray? And Mr. Mime came out first, but we were able to beat it in surprisingly quick fashion, because Murray's a fight that can really go horribly wrong. It could go, a really bad Murray can go easily 3 minutes, and thankfully we were not, it didn't go that poorly. Needed a little bit of help with Hitmonchan and the coin flips going our way, but thankfully we are now have the privilege of losing to Ronald a second time. But this strategy is going to be a tiny bit different in the sense that we have a Pokemon, this version of Ronald 2, has a trainer card called Energy Removal. Energy Removal, what it does is, it, like the name says, it removes an energy card from one of your Pokemon. And there's a funny little AI quirk with this specific version of Ronald, and this specific version of Ronald only, is if you were to use the Magnemize strategy, and you were to equip an energy card that is not Lightning, the AI, for some reason, even though it could have energy removal, if it does have it, it actually will not use it, thinking that it's not going to do anything with that energy. So that's a little bit of a way to be able to save a little bit of time, or rather avoid losing a lot of time as a result. So we basically are approaching, we're now more than halfway through the run, basically. And what we're going to do is basically get through the final set of trainer cards, a final set of bosses, I should say. And let's see, could we be in danger? We're actually not. So we actually are going up against the leader of the fighting club, which is Mitch. There's actually a number, this one is actually very interesting. There's a number of ways you can actually approach this fight. Mitch has a lot of very powerful Pokemon that can do a ton of damage. And so one strategy is to use a Mewtwo, which is a pretty risky strategy, depending on how your opening hand goes. So we could be, I don't know if we're in a world of trouble yet. It depends on what our next, it depends on what's going to happen next turn. If Mitch has a plus power, he does not. Okay, perfect. So that could have gone very, very poorly. Mewtwo is, I would say, one of the two riskiest strategies to beat Mitch, but if everything goes right with Mitch, you can actually get a really good time on him. And so the way we beat Mitch with Mewtwo is that we basically give ourselves the opportunity to attack on turn 2, even though Mewtwo requires 3 energy attacks. It does have a move that allows it to scoop up any energies that are in the discard pile, which essentially, like, if you equate it to like Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's like the graveyard in Yu-Gi-Oh! And we have a Professor Oak that gave us the opportunity to do that. And so we are, I'm just kind of trying to set up our deck to make sure that there aren't any cards that we might need. And so other strategies include using Abra and Kadabra for essentially the same reason as Mewtwo, being able to do a lot of damage, but it is frail, and so if you don't get it, if you don't have good trainer cards and you're going second, then that's where it kind of becomes a little bit of an issue. But we are actually going to use the Kadabra strategy for this fight. Rick, he is the, believe it or not, he is the leader of the Science Club. That's right, there are so few types in this game. The Pokemon card game, when they were designing this game, they had to design cards in order to actually meet the required 8 gyms or 8 clubs to be able to pull this off. Actually, hold on. So this is a bit of a risky strategy, but we are actually going to see if we have something that could potentially give us, okay. So one thing, the unfortunate part is that we had to basically give up our Kadabra, because we're actually going to lose, and we're trying to see if we can potentially still win this. And is this a loss? It is a loss. Okay. So we're just gonna reset the fight. That's kind of the unfortunate part, and sometimes in the speedrun where you get you think you have a great set of cards, and it turns out it just wasn't in it for you. And sometimes the heart of the cards, they just fail you. But we're gonna try to see if maybe we can get that that Mewtwo to go down. It's not. But what we'll do instead is see if we can waste away the heads of that tails. It is not. So we're actually gonna miss another loss because he will almost certainly have something for that Abra. We have computer search, so that actually is a bit of an easier thing to go through. That is and so basically, we just want to get Kadabra and get rid of that Mewtwo. That's kind of what the essence of this speedrun. And thankfully, we can finally rest easy. It's taken us quite a while to get to this point. We finally beat Mewtwo, which can be a little bit of a tricky fight, but thankfully we were able to beat the first fight of the game. Let's see. So now it's basically a game of who is going to whether or not Rick can get anything that will get his deck out of a predicament. And for the moment, it looks like we are potentially in a safe spot because we have a second Abra, and we could potentially still have another Kadabra waiting in the wings. It depends on what's gonna happen, but we might need that second Kadabra because that Porygon did something called did a move called Conversion. And what Conversion does is that it'll change a Pokemon's weakness. So instead of Kadabra being weak to Psychic, it's now weak to it is now weak to Grass, which Grimer is. But thankfully, we'll have the second Kadabra going, and we are going to get this ball rolling for the rest of the run. We are entering, like I said, we are actually entering closer to the end of the run, I should say. There is, trying to think, there are, doing quick math in my head, there are 8 fights remaining after this one. And we have a Coughing, which we are hoping we actually get poisoned instead of Confusion. We actually didn't have an encounter statuses outside of Paralysis a whole lot, but basically what Poison does is after every turn you lose 10 health, which can stack up very quickly. Confusion is very annoying. What Confusion does is if you want to attack or even want to switch out Pokemon, you have to flip a coin. If it lands heads, the action goes through. If it lands tails, not only is the turn automatically over, but you also hit yourself with 20 damage of your own type, meaning Kadabra would be taking 20 damage of Psychic damage, and that can be real problematic because Kadabra is weak to Psychic. So instead of 20, it's actually going to do it will actually do 40 because every time you hit for weakness damage, it'll actually do twice as much. For resistances, if it resists a certain type and it gets hit with that move, is whatever how much damage that'll do plus the minus 30. So if something hits you for 50 damage, but you resist it, it'll do 20 damage because 50 minus 30 is 20. So now we have Brittany. Brittany is one of the more unique fights in the game, only because Brittany has one of every type of Pokemon type that exists. And what it'll do, it'll spam a lot of Pokemon that'll be very annoying to go through. However, the deal with Brittany is that because she has one of every type, resource management is very difficult for her to contend with. And so we're just fortunate that we can... Okay, so that is going to be a heads. Let's see if we can actually beat this. Let's see if we can beat this this Magmar in one go. Unfortunately, it's not. But we're still in a really darn good position to get this win next turn. So if we can flip the coin, it is... Okay, so Smokescreen, what Smokescreen does is that it basically forces us to have to flip a coin if we want to attack. If it lands heads, then our attack goes through. If it lands tails, the turn actually ends right then and there. But thankfully, Brittany is over, so we only have 2 more fights before we get into the Pokemon Dome, which is, like I mentioned earlier, it is basically this game's version of the Elite Four. And so that is going to be where our toughest challenge yet. And let's see, we actually don't have a ton of energy cards for this minor portion before we get into the Pokemon Dome, but it is still fine. Because let's see if we can potentially get something going. We have a way to be able to attack first turn, and okay. So what we were trying to aim for, we were trying to see if we can get a plus power to be able to beat the Oddish on turn 1. Unfortunately, we did not, but we'll take a turn to win because we have a full heal. So I was not worried if we didn't get the win on turn 1. So now we are just only minutes away from entering the Pokemon Dome. We have one final badge to go through, and that is the Grass badge. And the Grass is another club where we have to beat all the minions before we can actually challenge the leader. But this one's actually funny because the leader was never in the Grass club to begin with, and the only way to have her appear in the game is if we were to beat all the minions, and then they'll tell us where she is, which is at the top left portion of the map. So we actually have a plus of her to begin with. This could be a very quick fight. This might be our quickest boss fight yet. This is partially what makes the Charmander deck very manageable, is the fact that you get a lot of fire type Pokemon, which allows you to challenge this fight significantly quicker than what I'm doing, than where I'm at my run. Usually they would hold it off as like the first or second gym for a Charmander run, but on Bulbasaur we're actually going to leave it till our very last metal, and we had a very favorable draw on turn 1, allowing us to attack and to be able to make our attack stronger with plus power. So yeah, that is it. That is actually all 8 badges, but we're not done yet. We have the Grand Masters to contend with, and all of them have 8 legendary cards that are actually never printed in the game. And you'll kind of see that in a moment, that we actually have the opportunity to do so. The reason being is because these cards, they have effects that never took into consideration the original 1998 rule set of the game. It introduced elements of randomness that would only be able to easily and efficiently be able to be made with computers, not in a physical card game. So Courtney is our fire leader, and her ace is a Articuno. I'm sorry, not Articuno. Articuno is much later. Moltres. And as you see that Moltres, yes, for a split second. Moltres, what it will do is, when it's played, it is actually going to have, Courtney will be able to acquire 1 to 4 random fire energy cards and add it to her hand, which it's kind of annoying to have to contend with, because she will always have resources to be able to attack. But our answer to Courtney is Dugong, or depending on how the rest of your deck is built, could also just be Articunos. We actually got a lot of Articunos throughout the run, but we actually have been having a stellar job with getting the necessary evolution cards. So we are actually just going to be doing just the fights with this Dugong deck. That Magmar, that is the same Magmar that I mentioned earlier that has Smokescreen. It is a massive time waster, and we are fortunate to have actually beaten Courtney in surprisingly straightforward fashion. So that's a fight that a lot of the speedrunners actually do not like to deal with, because if you have to reset that fight, then you actually have to, then it's like a 40-second time waster, because you actually have to go through an unskippable cutscene introducing all the Grandmasters. But we beat Courtney on the very first try, and so now we're editing our deck for the very last time. Because we now have our 3-deck trios. That is what's going to propel us to victory for these final 4 fights. So, Steve, as you'll kind of notice, you see the lightning, you see the yellow color scheme. You kind of already guess what his ace is. It's Zapdos. It's not the Zapdos. It's not this Zapdos, not this one. However, this Zapdos is very well. There it is. So what I was going to say is that Zapdos that you just saw right there. You kind of just notice what it can do, but it has a special ability where when it is played on the field, it will do 30 damage. Actually, no, we actually want to try to attack. It will do 30 damage to any random Pokemon on the field, whether it's his Pokemon, whether it's my Pokemon, who knows? So we are always at the mercy of that Zapdos until we get the trio. But thankfully, this could still potentially be a problem if we don't get a... Could be a problem. We'll just wait. Okay, we'll see what he does. Okay, that Zapdos could have actually ended the fight right then and there, because Zapdos, that specific Zapdos has a move that does 100 damage, and even though the trio resists lightning, he has a second legendary Zapdos that can also make the fight very annoying. But essentially, that Zapdos can do 100 damage. Even though the trio resists lightning, it'll still do 70, which will one-shot our mole friend right here. So, thankfully, once we have the trio, for the most part, you kind of essentially won this fight against Steve. Steve is just very annoying sometimes when it comes to speedrunning, because he will just spam that Zapdos like it's nobody's business. But like I said, once you got the trio out on the field, it's game over. So that is Steve. Now comes the hardest fight in the game, and I'm not kidding. Jack. Jack has that Articuno that I was mentioning. And his deck is comprised of literally everything that a speedrunner hates in a fight. It has Lapras that has just enough health to be able to... Okay, that is actually going to be heads. Accidentally reset it out of fear that it was going to be tails. Where is our deck trio? There it is. Perfect. So we have our Lapras that can do quite a bit of damage. And it is confused. So, okay, this is interesting. So we want to... Okay, this is fine. So, he has a Switch. Okay, so not a Nintendo Switch, just the trainer card Switch, which, as the name implies, it will actually do a lot of damage. Or switch in that Lapras that was actually going to KO us. But thankfully, we evolved and we actually got out of that problem for the moment. And, we got hit with confusion again. Yeah, Lapras is extremely annoying because it can do... Do we have a... We do not. Okay, so we are actually going to... Well, let's see if we can actually... Our attack goes through. Oh, it does. So Lapras, very annoying. He also has Dugong, which as we saw with the Courtney fight, very powerful indeed. We're actually going to see if we can avoid getting out of this potential problem. We need a full heal. And if we don't get one right now, right this second, then we essentially lose this fight. Yeah, we lost this fight. So basically, he has Lapras. His Articuno can attack, can paralyze us, actually. Can hit us with paralysis throughout the fight, and it can be quite annoying. Because he has a trainer card called Scoop Up. What Scoop Up does is basically send one of this Pokemon that he has, where he has it out on the field or on his bench, and start and be able to add it to his hand and place it on his bench again. And the Pokemon power is not something where you can only do once per turn. It'll do it however many times he has the ability to do so in that turn. And ooh, we got hit with Confusion again. That is not fun, but we do have a... Thankfully, we have our trusty full heal to be able to get us out of that jam. Okay, so he also has Chansey's, as you may have noticed, and Chansey can do quite a lot. Let's see, we'll do Energy Rumble here to avoid basically going back into that thing I was mentioning earlier. If that Pokemon was going to be knocked out, then all it does is basically the Jack will just avoid putting any more energy Pokemon, even though it actually could have been useful for him to try to do that. He just did not. He just chose not to. And we get Confusion again. This is now starting to be very problematic for us. Do we have the ability to try to win here? Gonna be very difficult, but we just have to see if we can actually pull this off. And this is why Jack is one of the hardest fights of the game. Let's see. We have... Okay, that will count as another loss for us. So if you kind of notice, yeah, this fight can be extremely annoying. We haven't even seen the Articuno yet, then, because that Articuno, he actually has two versions of Articuno. The one that can freeze us, and one that can also do a ton of damage. And ooh, that is actually, he actually has Switch, meaning we want to... Let's see. How can we actually... Do we have a... We have a Pokeball. We have the Trio. So we will just simply evolve to avoid having to deal with the issues that come with a fight against a Lapras. And that is getting knocked out on it with one move. And oh, finally, we finally have Confusion land our way. So we have, let's see, we can get rid of the Mysterious Fossil and the extra. Yes, we can get rid of the Fossil and the extra Diglett to give us a plus power, and that will be... Oh, there's the Articuno, and thankfully the Articuno missed the coin flip to be able to attack us. Let's see. Do we have... We have Gust of Wind, and we can try to... Let's try to see if we can take out that Seal. That Seal can still evolve into Dugong, which will spell disaster for us if we are not careful. And thankfully, we avoid Confusion again. Let's see if we can get another plus power. Unfortunately, we did not. So now we're just at the mercy of this coin flip. Lancetails, thank goodness, because otherwise that could have been really bad. But we now have a second Diglett and a second Duck Trio, so not as bad as it could be. All right, and if everything goes well, I think this fight is essentially over. We just need 2 more turns of things not going wrong. And that will be about it. We still have 2 more fights after this, but significantly easier than we would just encounter. But now, and this is why I said this is the hardest fight in the game. And it still could have gone even worse. That's the kind of the unfortunate part. Rod has his legendary Pokemon, which is not even a legendary Pokemon. It's Dragonite, and Dragonite is really not gonna do a whole lot. In fact, there's a good chance you might never see Dragonite in the game. So let's see. We don't need that. We don't need a second one. We don't need Pokeball, so we have a Fighting Energy card, which is perfect. He has a Charmander. Yeah, so Rod's deck is the... If you remember Lance from back in the days of Red and Blue, where he has a dragon deck per se, but the deck is actually just Pokemon that you can make the argument could look like a dragon, and is stuff like Charizard and Dragon and Dragonite and Charizard. I'm sorry, not Charizard. Gyarados, I should say. But the thing is, in order to get to those types of Pokemon, you need to evolve, and Rod has and those Pokemon are extremely weak. And Rod is the easiest out of the 4 Grandmasters, so we were able to beat him relatively easily. Now we have to deal with Ronald. And this, we might have to reset because Ronald has 2 of every single legendary card in the entire game. So we're actually going to reset because this is essentially a dead hand. Because we want to try to get a way to get a Duck Trio. Once we get the Duck Trio, we're essentially home free. Okay, so he has a Moltres, and he might have another legendary bird. Actually, he does not. Sometimes he will open with 2 of the legendary birds, and it can be quite annoying. So he has a... Okay. So what we are actually doing right now, we use a move called... a trainer card called Energy Search. What Energy Search does is it allows us to search through our deck and get any energy card that we want. But we're actually not going to do that. We're not going to do its intended purpose. What we do with energy removal is we essentially scout out what is the top of our deck. And if the top of our deck is something that we like, then we will actually reset the game, because resetting doesn't do anything, shuffle the deck or anything of the sort. So we basically... Okay, that is both were tails. But let's see what could be a threat. Actually, nothing is a threat up to so far. Moltres is the only quote-unquote threat, but that's only because we can't do anything to physically harm it. At least not right now. That is going to be another tail. So we are going to at least do a tiny bit of damage. And wanted to make sure that that coin flip was going to be a tails. We're going to do a tiny bit of damage with that plus power, but essentially not going to do anything. So we're just now... It's now a waiting game as making sure what's going to come out first. Is it going to be our... Okay, this is going to be unfortunately another reset, because we just aren't able to get that the trio out, and every turn that we waste in not getting a trio, it's just going to make the fight a lot more difficult, because Ronald will just keep resetting and keep adding stuff to his bench. Okay, that is going to... we have really been unlucky with a lot of these coin flips, but if everything goes well, we might be able to still salvage this. So we have, let's see. Can this, okay, that is actually a heads. Okay, so this actually will be fine. So actually, okay, this is fine. This is great. We have Moltres, but because we have our the trio now finally, I don't want to say the fight's essentially over because he has nothing that can actually hurt us. So he may have Zapdos and he may have Articuno, but there's a really funny thing about these fights. Zapdos and Articuno actually cannot attack. They actually can't because Ronald forgot to add lightning and water energy cards. He forgot to do that. And because of that, he actually is only using the Zapdos and the Moltres as damage sponges. So if you notice, he never has those cards that he needed. Do we have another Gust of Wind? We do. And all right, that is it. Perfect. Alrighty then, we are actually about to come up on time very, very soon. We just need to do, we need to be able to actually get our prize, which is one copy of every single legendary card. And you kind of see there's the Articuno, you saw the Moltres, now you're going to see the Zapdos, and now you're going to see the Dragonite that we never saw because Rod doesn't know how to actually build a deck around that Dragonite. So we were going to be starting coming on time in 3, 2, 1, time. All right, that is Pokemon TCG. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you so much to the Anime Speedrun Festival community. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. And I want to also give a special shout out to the Pokemon TCG speedrunning community for all their help throughout the years and all the support and their feedback. And also a special shout out to our Japanese restreamers and our Brazilian restreamers. I'm gonna try my best, but I want to say arigatou gozaimasu and obrigado to our Japanese and Brazilian restreamers. And for those who don't know, I just basically trying to say thank you in their native language. Hopefully, I didn't offend you guys. I just wanted to show my appreciation to the hardworking people that are not just streaming, organizing this marathon, but also the people who are doing the restreams all across the world. Thank you so much, and I greatly, greatly appreciate being a part of this.